Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I got something that I want to start out by asking you this week. And on the surface, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, I know the answer. But as you dig deeper, you're probably going to struggle with the answer like I did. And when I struggle with an answer, I want to find the person that asked the question. So I'm going to start with the question. And the question is, what is your sales competitive advantage? Think
Hmm.
about that for a second. What is your sales uh, um, competitive advantage? What do you do that like nobody else does? And I want to set this, stage, like imagine today, at, your next appointment. Your next appointment is with the absolute best prospect that you've ever had in your sales career. We're all thinking of somebody, we're all salivating, and we're sitting in their office and they bring us in and then they say, they sit you down and they say, so why should I buy from you? And I tell you what, that question is really one of those questions that is like the seven mysteries of the world. It just plagues people. And so I want to unpack that today. I'm honored to be hanging out with Curt Tueffert. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you?
Awesome. You are VP of Sales and Development for DXP. So we're honored for you to be hanging out. You're also part of the University of Houston teaching staff, and you teach sales, which, my gosh, there's not a lot of those classes being taught around the country, are there?
No, there's not. There's a couple of pockets of excellence, universities who have programs for selling. The University of Houston has one of those, but by and large, it's not a real popular topic, and it's difficult to teach sales if you're not in sales.
Yeah, I tell you what, and everybody thinks sales is really easy to do, right? And so until they do it for a while, or until they
Exactly.
have to do it for a paycheck. So yeah, so I appreciate you, taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. I really like the fact of thinking about your sales competitive advantage. So, I'm going to just lay that one out to you right away on that, Curt. If you were sitting across from your ideal customer, your ideal prospect, I'm going to say the person that is about to buy something from you, how would you answer that question? You can pick any of the companies that you work involved and you're involved with, but how do you instruct your students? How do you tell people to answer that question? What are some key things to get, that point across?
Dave, that's a great question about what would be your competitive advantage. Flipping the table, why would the person on the other side of the table or telephone or Zoom chat want to buy from you? And
Right.
I stress, whether it's at my corporation or at the university, that there's got to be a differentiator that you have that would set you apart just long enough to keep that conversation going. And
Right.
so I'm real big on the whole idea of research, knowing the person you're going to meet, knowing the company they work for, trying to get some internal coaching so that you can use a methodology that I teach at the University of Houston and at DXP. It's basically something that was created by some people close to you guys in Minnesota, and their company is Impacts, IMPAX.
Okay.
And it's typically something called them, us, fit, action.
Okay.
What do you know about them? Is that enough to talk about us? I'm here to talk about a business fit, and here are the action steps we need to accomplish. Those four things could be, if done properly, communicated and articulated in about 18 minutes, giving you the rest of the time to move right into those action steps. But again, it requires research,
Sure.
coaching, detective work. And we have every tool available to us, from software products that will give us an analysis of the company to social media that gives us an analysis of the person. And in my career, I actually lean in to the salesperson selling me, who knows about me, who knows about my company, and who can connect the dots and discover a business need that their product or service fits.
So I think those are great words, them, us, fit, and action. And so I'm guessing that if you're the kind of sales professional that you're having to make a bunch of calls in a day. I mean, I met somebody in one of my roundtables that was like, he had to do like 200 calls a day. And it was like, how in the world, there is no them at that point, right? There's no really researching. So are you an advocate of more, less is more, so to speak, where you're actually, calling on less people, but you're making progress on more accounts? Or what are your thoughts on if I have to make a bunch of calls in a day?
Well, I think there's a purpose for this dial and smile. I don't know if that purpose is meaningful in 2022 with all of the different gating factors and caller ID screenings and things of that nature. I like your idea of less is more. I find the right people that fit most of the demographics and the
Mhm.
psychographics of what your product and service can touch,
Sure.
and then be compelled to get that conversation going because you feel you have a solution to their business problem rather than I've got a great solution, but there's no problem out there to solve.
Sure. Well, and I think it's funny because in one of my past businesses that I owned, we adopted the quote less, sell more philosophy because, we don't get paid to quote. People, quoting departments, inside sales departments tend to not get paid just to create a quote, right? You can't take those to the bank and the bank says, oh my gosh, look at all those quotes. Yeah, I'm going to definitely pay you for all those. So I like the fact that there's the them. We're going to start there and we're going to really unpack what's going on for that person. I mean, with LinkedIn and all these different things, I'm curious if people get like creeped out by that. Like if I knew something deep into your LinkedIn profile, is that like awkward for a prospect, or is that becoming more acceptable and actually more preferred nowadays?
If I've got a LinkedIn profile that has information deep in there, it's out there on the public world. And so,
Sure.
yeah, you can use that because it's public.
Yeah.
When the impacts method talks about them must fit action, they really are talking about, do I have a coach in that big account that can give me some inside speak, can give me some things that I couldn't find on the publicly traded 10K? Can I get some information that I can use as a leverage for the good, not as a creepy sense,
Sure.
but as a sense that says, like for instance, our company is public. We're moving into the energy sector hot and heavy because oil and gas seems to be a bad word. If someone came to me and said, I've noticed that you guys are moving to this, help me to understand what are some of the challenges that you're finding as your customers are adopting and adapting to this thing called environmental social governance.
Sure.
That sentence alone tells me that that person has taken the time to look at my profile, to look at my company, to do the
Gotcha.
research. And you bet I want to spend time with that person
Yeah.
because they actually know and they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's way better than sitting down in front of Curt. Imagine sitting down in front of Curt trying to sell him something and say, so Curt, what is it that you guys do here? you
We,
know?
you, you know, I have actually stopped sales calls and said, I appreciate you coming here. Why
Yeah.
don't we reschedule this for about 4 weeks? Go out
Yep.
there and do some research and then come
Sure.
back.
Yeah.
They look at me like I offended their parents. And it's like, you know, if you're going to a vice president of $1 billion company, you better be loaded with
Right.
information and
Yep.
you should be able to connect the dots before you even get to the table. Otherwise,
Yep.
it's the death knell. Don't ever come and say, so what does your company do?
Right.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and look at it from the prospect's perspective. I mean, I look at it and I'm real and thinking I'm just an interruption in their day. So something that I said or something that somebody else said, sparked a little interest that they agreed to see me or agreed to see a client that I'm working with, whatever. We need to figure out what that is. We need to, exploit that as best that we can, because there was a reason that, and you invited me in. And realistically, I think, Curt, if you, I'm a proponent of asking, thanks for inviting me in. I'm just curious, when we talked, what was it that really resonated with you that allowed me to get this appointment with you? I'm not smart enough to read their mind to know that there's 3 things they're trying to get out of me. So why not just ask? I mean, it's so much easier because then they take control of the conversation, and then I'm much better at responding than trying to lead the conversation because I don't know where they want it to go. So I'm just curious if in that them stage, if we're asking a bunch of questions or we already know a lot of those answers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if it's a publicly traded company with a lot of data, you probably have a direction that you'd like to take the conversation. If not, if this is kind of a mom and pop or a small medium business where you couldn't get what you needed from their internet site or from the general competition around them, I would use your question, Dave, and I would say, hey, what compelled you to let me sit at this desk? Because I know you're busy and there's a lot of other things you could be doing. I
Yeah.
love the way you shift the power from the seller to the prospect and
Yeah.
allow them to take control of the conversation. And they may look at you and say, gosh, it's been 2 weeks. I don't know.
Right.
That's a fair
Exactly.
statement.
Yeah. Then what?
Well, then the
you
beauty
know,
is then you can take control and go, the purpose of this is to
yep.
qualify to see if there's a fit between us, Dave. If there
Yep.
is, great. If not, I'll be quickly on my way.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's a
Yep.
technique, but it works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. And it's something that, I train, some salespeople, and I try and tell them, hey, you know what, don't be talking so much, I like the 65, 35, 70, 30 rule where I'm talking about 35% of the time, 65 to 70% of the time, the prospect's talking, which means they're 2 words to every one of mine.
Good point.
And it's really hard. I don't know what your experience has been, Curt, but it's really hard to get sales professionals out of that talking mode. They love to talk. They're nervous, most likely, and they have all this information that they have to share. So, in that them stage, how do you kind of get them to, hey, just calm down a little bit, let breathe a second and, let somebody else talk. Do you guys work on that stuff?
Absolutely. You're taking a chapter right out of Mark Shonka, who wrote the Impacts Processes book. And he has, not only does he have the them must fit action little analogy or a 4-step process, but inside that one, he has something called business practice, business objectives, business strategies, business issues. My job as a detective is to find out, if I can, what their strategies, what their objectives, what their issues are. And when I share that with the customer and I go, look, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come down here. Why did you ask me to come? Do you remember? This is what I know about your company. And then I start walking through these 4 legs of the chair, 4 legs of the table, if you will. Here's what I understand about your business profile. Here's what I understand about your objectives. Here's what I understand about your strategies and your challenges or your issues. And then you just kind of give them that humble, Dave, do I have a grasp of what your company does? If
Sure.
you did your job so well that you blew away that person
Right.
because you knew more about their company than they did, because you
Sure.
did research, because you had a coach,
Right.
then you can say, great, because the rest of my presentation hinges on that one. I'd like to share a little bit about DXP. And then everything you do maps around their business profile, objections, strategies, and issues. And it's truly a remarkable sales process, much better than, show up and throw up.
Yep.
And when I say those open-ended questions, like you said, it's a 70-30. I speak 30% of the time. I use open-ended questions, and they get a chance to peel out the onion.
Yeah, that's awesome. And even simply at the start, it's funny how hard it is for some people to do open-ended questions. You ask a prospect, are you having a good day, as a yes or no question, as opposed to how's your day going, is basically it's just such a little switch. but the propensity for people to give you more than a one-word answer when how's your day going, is way different than you having a good day. And they're like, yeah. I mean, what if the guy says you're having a good day and he says no? It's like, now what do I do? So I really, you got to be careful for the questions you ask to be prepared for whatever answers that are there. So that's awesome. So as we shift from them to us, then explain that transition and explain what goes on in that us stage, if you could.
Absolutely. When you transfer from understanding them, their needs, their wants, their desires, some of the challenges that they have, in the back of your mind, you're kind of gauging how much trust and rapport are they giving you? Because if they're giving you one-word answers, if you feel they're being defensive, you got to shift your approach, because you're really not building any relationship or value. When you
Sure.
do, and you move from them to us, as you tie in your product, your service, whatever that would be, keep it very, very short and simple, and tie it directly to what you uncovered as you discovered their issues, their challenges, things of that nature. We were started in 1908. We're over 100 years, $1 billion company. All they hear is blah, 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 because
Right.
none of that is applicable to them. And
Yep.
so I usually say, it's very complicated what we do based on what I think I understand you doing. And then I start saying, I think, help me to understand. And then I use what I call kind of a 3-step questioning. Who do you use? What do you like about them? If you ever were to change, what would cause you to change?
Sure.
Now, I'm not asking you to change your brand of beer or your
Yep.
favorite Italian restaurant.
Right.
I'm just absolutely curious. I'm curious. Where do you buy your products? Oh, I buy them
Right.
from ABC.
Sure.
Really? What do you like about them? Oh,
Yep.
ABC's great. Well, if you ever were to
Yep.
change, what would cause you to change? Well, my wife is the president of ABC. Ugh.
Yep. Oops.
Well,
Next.
next. Now you have to shift and go, well, I'm not going to spend any more time here unless you're about to
Yep.
have a divorce, and this is a great opportunity for
Yeah.
me. And so everything we do in sales, and Dave, I know you teach this, it's all about discovery and being curious.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gets you through the 200 calls, or that slogging through
Sure.
kind of an old methodology that's, I just don't see where it applies that much today, when people are so busy on technology devices.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to stop and listen to a pitch.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think so. We do a lot of work here with DISC, the personality profile assessment tool.
You
And
bet.
so when it comes to salespeople, sales professionals, I tend to say, your prospect has a certain way that their personality is. So if I walk in as a bubbly, energetic, talkative sales professional like I am, and I'm like, blah, 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 talking all this, and then I ask you a question and you're a one-word answer, I have to quickly realize that if I continue to be the way that I am and you continue to be the way that you are, there's probably going to be a disconnect. And so, that's where I think, whether you call it mirroring, I like to call it being a chameleon. If I'm in front of somebody that doesn't smile and all I do is smile, that makes them uncomfortable a lot of times. And the last thing we want to do is make our prospects uncomfortable. So in that them and us, I'm hoping that people that are listening are thinking about, adapting their presentation style to match the style of the prospect, and even
Dave,
changing some words. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
you'll appreciate this. I've been teaching DISC for 20 years.
Nice.
It is in the textbook in college. So
Good.
we go through that, and then at DXP, we use it extensively. And I always encourage my salespeople, be a student of the DISC profile to
Yep.
determine, is this by dominant, influential, steady, compliant? We use the red, yellow, green, and blue.
Yep.
Most of the time, our sales guys, we call it in our internal speak a crooked Z, the very high D, super high I, kind of
Yep.
low S, kind of low D.
Yep.
Now,
That's me.
yeah, me too. And
Yep.
typically we sell to application engineers. We
Yep.
sell to maintenance people. We sell to people
Sure.
in purchasing. Typically, They're
Yep.
opposite.
Yep.
So if you approach in neutral and not go in there, hey Dave, how you doing? This is Curt from DXP. I'm jacked on coffee, and man, I've got something for you.
Yep.
It's not the Sunday night monster truck rally voice.
Right.
It's more, hey Dave,
Yep.
I'd love the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we have to offer. And now I'm matching and mirroring. I'm listening for the clues that I learned about the disc profile.
Right.
And if I know I got a guy with a super high blue or a high C,
Yep.
highly analytical, plays within the rules, paints by the
Yep.
numbers,
Yep.
I'm going to give them plenty of time to analyze every thought, I'm going to give them the data sheet and wait till he highlights it in 3 colors.
Right.
That's
Yep.
fine. Be a
Absolutely.
student.
That's great. And the funny thing is about that is I think you can determine a lot from somebody's LinkedIn profile by the words they use, by what it looks like. So in that research slot that you're talking about, Curt, we hopefully are kind of identifying their personality right there, because that's really the good research to have. I think of it as a language situation. If I would have jumped on this podcast with you today and I would have started in a language that you didn't understand, how long would it be before you'd raise your hand and be like, Dave, I don't understand what you're saying? And that's so often how a sales call goes. To your point, you have that voice, that's that monster truck rally voice. An engineer, they shut down. I mean, they don't necessarily even know it's happening, but it just, their brain shuts down and they have that blank stare. And now you're going, well, now what? I mean, it's pretty much done at that point, right? So I think it's really crucial in that them and us stage to focus on, understanding them as a person, because again, in communication, we tend to expect the person that's listening to us to change to our way. And I think that's where the problem comes in is, when I wrote Growing on Purpose, we spend time on improving the customer's experience. And part of that experience is speaking their language. I mean, if we were in a different country and nobody in a crowded area was speaking our language, and then all of a sudden we heard English, we would gravitate to go find who is that person, and that's kind of how the same thing is here in that call. So I'm glad that you're using DISC in that piece. Do you feel that most sales professionals that see that, are they understanding it? Is that a hard concept for them to grasp, or is it something that kind of comes natural in your experience?
That's such a great question, Dave. Such a huge question. This is what I'm finding after being in sales for about 4 decades. Some people change, not all people change.
Sure. Yep.
And so whether it's a book that you have prominently displayed behind you, phenomenal book, your story, taking a startup to $10 million, obviously you have knowledge. If it's a book on how to get rich in 6 months, if it's the DISC profile that you go through your assessment and you have so many aha moments that you cannot wait to apply this to your sales career, 3 days later, you forget it all. And
Yep.
It frustrates me to no end, because it's a rare game. It's a rare breed of salesperson who says, well, why did it take me all year to make my quota?
Yep.
Why couldn't I make it in the first 6 months? Well,
Right.
you could do some things commercially to get yourself better trained, and then you can do some stuff technically to connect better with your customers and your prospects, but it's a want to. And
Yeah.
I just decided one day that I was going to become the student of DISC, and I don't even know that I change when I change, but I certainly do coach my salespeople who come in hot and heavy and all jacked on coffee. And to your point, they're talking to an engineer and they shut down in 5 minutes, and
Yep.
the rest of the sales call is like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And from a brain perspective, the number is probably up for debate, but, I'm going to say in the first 20 to 30 seconds, your brain decides whether or not you like the person that you're sitting across from. So let's just say we're in that meeting that we talked about at the onset of the show, that you're in front of the ultimate best prospect you could have possibly imagined. You're like, oh my gosh, you'd wet your pants if you could. You were so excited. And the reality is that in the first 20 to 30 seconds, that person is his brain or her brain are deciding, do I like this person or don't I? Now, once your brain says, I like this person, your brain is looking for reasons to reinforce why I like this person. Oh my gosh, they're dressed well. I like their, style. I like their talk. Oh, I really like their briefcase. Whatever it is, your brain's looking for that. Conversely, when you walk in, and if you do have that salesman-y feel and they don't like that, now they start to find all the things that are wrong with you. I didn't like his pitch. Boy, his voice is loud. He never looks me in the eye, whatever it is. And that's what I think is so crucial about that first few seconds, is to, find a way to connect with that person. And I always think it's funny, there's a big sailfish on the back of the wall or something, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, you like sailfish? And I mean, no, I don't. I don't, this isn't even my office, I mean, it's like, if you're at that spot and you didn't check into his LinkedIn or her LinkedIn profile, and you don't know anything that they enjoy, obviously that's going to be a challenge. And so I really appreciate that.
I have so many stories of my own personal failure experience on that one. I'll share a brief one because I'm here in Houston, Texas. We're only a few hours away from a little town called College Station that has a kind of small university called Texas A&M. So I'm doing a sales call on a guy who is a rock star in the insurance world. He owns 14 different locations, and he is the number 2 nationwide insurance agent.
Nice.
I roll up to his office. I get into his office. I sit down, and he's a nice guy. And I share a copy of my book. He shares a copy of his book. And I thought the thing was going okay. And I look above his head. Instead of a sailfish, there was a prominently displayed towel displayed in a glass case. And I looked and I go, Warren, I'm curious, what is that towel all about? And his entire office was barfed in maroon. It was as A&M as A&M
Sure.
could ever get.
Sure.
And he looked at me and he goes, why don't we stop this interview? And why don't you come back in about 2 weeks? He shut me down. And I went back and I went to my company, which is prominently A&M graduates.
Sure.
And I said, man, I just had this call. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah.
And they just go, Curt, just Google Warren Barhorst. Okay. Warren Barhorst, rock star in the insurance world. Oh my gosh, super successful. Oh, he was in the Cotton Bowl. Oh, he was the guy that stole the towel from the quarterback on the opposing team. He was part of the 12th man. All this legacy and lore. I put both feet in my mouth all the way to my ankles, and it was an epic fail. And when I came back 2 weeks later, it was a different sales call. He graciously gave me a second interview.
Sure.
And
wow,
what an epic fail! Oh my god.
Well, and that's why, I mean, a lot of it's awesome you got another chance. A lot of times we don't get that second chance. You just get shut down and you're done. I mean, Warren's got plenty of other things to do that day. And now he's got to reschedule for Curt because Curt didn't do his research, So, what a great story. Thanks for sharing that. As we jump into the fit piece, I think, the us and them, I think, are going to be kind of like simpler for people or easier for people. I think I see a lot of people bail at this fit spot. So for everybody listening, kind of explain what you mean when you say fit for people. What does that mean for you?
Exactly. Amateur salespeople jump in, lead with their line card, talk all about themselves. This process, this IMPAX from the Minnesota guys up there, the business fit comes third, because first I want to make sure I know everything I need to know about you and your company, and then a little bit of the fit about my company and me. The business fit is the reason I'm there. I'm here to solve a problem. I'm here to, whatever that is, provide a service. I'm here to relieve your pain. I'm here to grow your revenue. Whatever that business fit is, the reason it's the third and the reason it's so crucial is because the person you get in the room, as you said in the beginning of our conversation, Curt, if you could pitch the number one prospect, I would want to make sure that I bring the highest person in the room, the person who has the authority, because when I get to the business fit, it should resonate with them because of the research I've done. And that business fit is kind of a gate that moves us right into the action.
Yeah.
Here's the business fit. I think we have a reason to do business together because I place only oil and gas sales professionals in the niche that you serve. I have a 87% placement rate with the companies like yours. And the purpose of me being here is to get the shot at perhaps placing your next oil and gas salesman. So the
Sure.
action step, I just moved right through that one because I have the decision maker in the room. Is I'd like permission from you, president, senior vice president of HR, whomever, to be the person that can furnish you, get a shot, stay at the plate, give you
Hmm.
one shot at this.
Yep.
And that action step has the right decision makers in the room. We have been so successful in our supply chain services conversations that when we get to the business fit, why we think our service solves your problem, that we go for the holy grail, which is we would like a list of your top 100 products and the last price paid.
Mm.
If we can get to that, I can show you where we have savings.
Sure.
Who am I talking to? I'm talking to El Jefe. I'm talking to La Jefa. I'm talking to the person who has the authority to provide me the top 100 SKUs with cost. I'm not dancing around with Polly in purchasing who's going to be threatened by her job.
Sure.
I'm at the place where you set me up when you said, Curt, give me the ultimate person. Now, once I get that person's blessing and the signet ring, and I get those 100 top movers, and I can see where I can save you X dollars or maybe not, gives me a reason for a second appointment. Hey,
Sure.
guess what? Here's what we did. We did the analysis. I can save you 37% and give you just-in-time inventory. Or, hey, I don't know where you're buying your product from, Dave, but I'd like to buy from you because you get a better
Sure.
price than I do.
Sure.
That is
Exactly.
pure
Yep.
gold.
Yeah. Well, and I think where people, what you said at the beginning about it, I really liked, and I think that we don't want to gloss over that piece of the big question is we're not sure if this is a fit. We can't just make an assumption that we went to them and us and, oh my gosh, we are a fit 100%. If we've done our job in understanding them and they've given us the freedom to, talk about ourselves. And if they think it's a fit, then, and we think it's a fit, I think that's where sometimes we miss. I've sat across from people that totally aren't a fit for me. And I've had to say, wow, this is awesome. I just, I don't think this is a fit for me. And we need to give permission. I feel like we need to give permission to the prospect and say, do you feel like this is a fit? I don't know what the words are. Everybody probably uses a little different words, but without me getting some type of verbal acknowledgement from them about fit, I really don't feel comfortable going into that action step. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Man, you're preaching the gospel here, Dave. It's so crucial when you when you transition from amateur to professional salesperson. If there is not a business fit there,
Yep.
close your book
Yep.
and walk out. That's
Yep.
okay. You got to the place you needed to get to.
Right.
Recently, we were at a place where it took us forever to get this person. We finally got the appointment. I let the salesperson do their best. Then I jumped in at the end. I said, my famous, who do you use? What do you like about them? If you ever were to change, what would cause you to change?
Yep.
They said, I love them because they have an online ordering system that is automated like Amazon. It's so easy for me to order product after hours.
Sure.
And I said, you know what? Peace be with you. That is awesome. And we
Yeah.
left.
Yep.
And my salesperson was frosted.
Yep.
When we got in the car, he was very upset. And I go, tell me why you're upset. He goes, I took so long to get to this call. I can't believe you shut it down.
Yep.
I said, we don't do online ordering. There's
What are you
no
gonna do?
reason for us to continue this. There is no business fit as it relates to what they buy on the internet. The
Right.
stuff that they can't buy on the internet, they will continue to purchase from us, and that's fine. We'll build
Sure.
a hedge,
Yep.
we'll build a moat around that, because one of my cliches I teach is your best customer is your competition's best prospect.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so keep what you can,
Yep.
but please don't go out there and tell them you can do exactly what the other guy can do when they cannot.
Right. Well, and if you're not calling, I always say the same thing. If you're not calling on your customer, somebody else is. So, if you're cool with that, right now your customer could be being courted by your competition, okay. If that doesn't threaten you or that doesn't bother you, and granted, we could have a very secure relationship, but all they have to do is the same thing that you said, Curt, is if I word it a little different. I say, um, who, like if you find out who they're involved with, and ABC company, like you said, oh my gosh, they're a great company. Always want to, you don't want to take shots at your competition. That never works, right? And I always say, I'm not perfect, and they're probably not perfect. If ABC could do one thing better, what would it be? If they're saying that about you, and there's kinks in your armor, and some other sales professional grabs onto that, that's where obviously your account, your business could be in jeopardy. So I think that the fit is so darn important, because we both have to agree this is a good fit. And that's where I think it'd be kind of like, a marriage where not both parties speak. It's like the guy does all the talking, he says yes, and we don't ask her, we just make the assumption, right? And it's just like, man, you can't make the assumption here. You have to ask the question, do you feel like this is a fit? At least that's my preference, is to get some type of verbal recognition, because you could go into the action step. Because I think, is the action step like there's the most work is being done in the action step, if I understand this correct. Is that how that works?
It could be, depending upon how well you did in researching the business fit.
Sure.
If
Okay.
you're talking their language, if you've got the same inside cliches that they do, the action steps are because you determined in the first 20 seconds, I like this guy or I like this gal. They've done
Yep.
their homework. They get
Yep.
me.
Yep.
And then when we go to the business fit, the decision maker is agreeing. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. So the action step is that bold, you're basically closing for the highest level of commitment. If I've got the right person in the room who can make a decision on getting me the top 100 parts and their cost, then
Yeah.
the action step is I just need that list by Tuesday.
Yep.
You close with very firm commitments because you
Yep.
got the right person in the room.
Right.
And that's where you find out if you've built traction and trust and rapport. Because if I say, Dave, in order for me to get started, I just need you to get me that 100 list by next Wednesday. And
Sure.
that person, if they like you, says, that's reasonable. I can do that. And boom, we're off to the race. They
Yep.
say no, then you just take a different tack. But it's so amazing. It's so different than, hi, my name's Curt. This is what we do. Let me just take the first 45 minutes to tell you how wonderful my company is.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Oh gosh, look at the time. Well, I got to go now. Why don't we set up an appointment for 4 weeks from now and just continue to ghost?
Yeah.
Don't return my phone calls. Don't return my emails.
Yeah.
We don't need that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, if I think the hardest um trait for sales professionals is to think on your feet, because you have to, if you have a ABCDEF step process like this, them, us, fit in action, obviously if you're going to do it, ideally you want to do it your way. And if they jump ahead or jump into something else, you know I ask people how much time do they have for the appointment. I confirm that if we set it up for 30 minutes or 60 or whatever, I confirm that that's still the thing. What if you are assuming it's 60 minutes and the guy's like, oh my gosh, I have 15 minutes, something came up. Okay. Well, there you have this crossroads. There's no way you're going to fit in what you had in your mind in 60 minutes now in 15, but yet you don't want to leave and reschedule because this might be your only spot. So, we're filled constantly with these, decisions that we have to make, on the fly. So, for people listening, that's where hone in your skills as best you can. But one of the skills is the what if scenario. What if I only have 15 minutes? What do? What if not all the people in the room that were supposed to be in the room are in the room? I mean, there's just so many what ifs. So, that's what's fun about sales in my life, is it's never the same thing, right?
Yep. One of our senior vice presidents says, when you've seen one, you've seen one.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's what I think about on sales calls. Because you said you were going to give me 60 minutes, you gave me 15.
Right.
They said Dave would be in the meeting, but he was called away.
Right.
Well, of course he was called away. Who knows? I'm nothing to them today. But if it's a long-term relationship and Dave finds out Curt's going to be here Tuesday, he may clear his calendar, because the value Curt brings to the next equation is enough to get these senior people to want to see that person.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where professional selling becomes very rewarding.
And I think that's where I use two terms, salesperson and sales professional. You kind of transition from a salesperson into a sales professional when you adopt some type of process, because there's two processes going on. There's the system that the prospect has, and then there's your system. And if you follow the prospect system, you're going to most likely lose, because their system is going to drain you with they want to get all your free information. They want to hide from you. Then there's no real next steps. There's no commitments. There's just, man, I'm going to suck Curt dry for every piece of information. He wants my list of top 100 things with prices. I want his prices on these top 100 things. I'll do the comparison, Curt. Thank you very much. Right. So that's his or her system, and yours are, there's a lot of times where they conflict. So if we're not thinking on our feet, if we're not using the disc right, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to a successful sales call. It's not just walking in, like you said, show up and throw up. And there's so many people that do that. They talk for 45 minutes and, the guy or girl's not even paying attention halfway through the thing. I mean, that's just brutal. And then we blame them. That's always the funny part, is, we're a blame society. So it's the government's fault. It's the weather's fault. It's the prospect's fault. It's the company's fault. There's always somebody involved. And I love that, as a teacher, at University of Houston, you're having people look inwardly and realize this is your deal. This isn't necessarily, don't blame other people. And that's where I think that coaching piece is so helpful. So thanks for sharing all that today.
You bet.
So a couple questions, I'm gonna let you go. What would Curt Tueffert's tip of the week be?
The tip of the week would be, well, it's do your job so well that the living, the dead, and the not yet born could do it no better. Now that's Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
But the tip of the week is, what could you do this week that you could do better than what you ever did last week? Okay. Baby steps, constant improvement, reflect on that one thing and just work on that one thing.
That's awesome. Self-awareness is so important in sales. We need to be revising, redoing, changing whatever we can on a pretty consistent basis. But if we're not aware of what we're doing now, it's really hard to make that change. So thanks for sharing that. So one last question, I'm gonna let you go. What's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing, Curt?
One thing people don't know about me that I feel comfortable sharing is, gosh, I want to say something so clever that it's the greatest podcast ever on the planet, but
it already is the greatest podcast, dude. So you're good.
I am struggling with trying to learn Spanish because I've been married now for 15 months to a phenomenal, beautiful Venezuelan woman who is an application engineer. So she's my total disc profile opposite.
There you go.
And for some reason, at my pickled brain, the Spanish language doesn't stick. And so I struggle, but I like it. And of course, I'm going to try to master it to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. And you're a high D, so you want to master it in 20 minutes. Otherwise,
10 minutes. 10. And I beat the crap out of myself because I can't do it. And my
Oh my
wife
God.
just says, don't beat yourself up. And I go, but I have to. I'm so competitive. And she goes, who are you competing against? And I
Yeah,
go,
exactly.
well, you.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. Well, so she doesn't, how do you say something in Spanish so that we know that at least you're, on your way?
Uh, um, Yo hablo un poquito español.
I know very little Spanish.
Yeah, I speak very little Spanish.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Curt, for hanging out with us today. Again, if you're listening, hopefully now you are able to answer that question that we started with about why should I buy from you? There's hopefully something in the last 45 minutes or so that we have touched on that will help you. If you are struggling and you want some help, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Curt. If somebody wants to learn more about you, Curt, where's the best place for them to get in contact with you?
Easiest place is I'm on LinkedIn. There's only one Curt Tueffert on LinkedIn, so you can always find me there. I do a weird thing. I collect birthdays, and maybe in the show notes we can put that information out there on how I collect birthdays and I celebrate people's birthdays. So
Okay.
you send me that mailing address information, and then the next thing you know is you're on my birthday card list.
I saw the send out cards piece, so that's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Curt, for investing, your life in your students and with our listeners today. And again, rather than jump to your next podcast, everybody, I'm just going to encourage you to take a look at your sales process. Not the process that the prospect has, but your process, and see how us fit in action can work into that. And if you need help, again, reach out to Curt on LinkedIn. He's got books, there's things going on all the time in his world. So please make yourself available to those. And again, thanks, Curt, for hanging out with us. I learned a ton. I got notes now. I gotta answer that question. Why would somebody want to buy from me? So thanks for making me have more work to do today. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dave. My pleasure.